Look at Apple. They are about innovations to make people's lives better. That brand promise does not change when you look at 10 years ago, what they may do 10 years from now. But the messaging and the way you talk about the problems that you're solving, they evolve as the markets change. And I asked them a very simple question. In what condition will you not switch even if a competition offers you the same 20% lower price? And what they say is a gold.
Welcome to Masterminds webinar series, where we invite industry leaders to share valuable insights on scaling up a business. I'm Sandesh Banger from Success Alchemists. Success Alchemists is a business coaching organization which works with mid-sized firms, helping them scale their business. Today we have Mr. Paresh Bhavsar with us. He is a marketing professional with 30 years of rich experience. In conversation with Paresh, today we are going to focus on brand promises and brand messaging. Paresh, welcome to Masterminds.
Thank you, Sandesh. Glad to be here.
So, Paresh, tell us about you, your work, and your expertise in marketing.
So, as you described in the opening, I've been in the marketing field for about 30 years. Started my journey in the US with startups, then enterprises. I was in the US for about 20 years, and I have led marketing departments where helped companies form their go-to-market strategies, penetrate into markets, grow the funnel, and grow company revenues in double digits. And my last stint was with one of the largest agencies where I handled a portfolio of about 60 odd clients, looking after their go-to-market strategy, their overall brand messaging, brand promise, and delivering on the growth programs. And then I moved back to India for good and started Bold Dialogue to help businesses grow, and do that through making sure that the story they're telling the world to their customers resonates, and have worked with more than 100 businesses. It's been an exciting ride, and I love everything that touches the marketing.
Great. Thanks, Paresh. So, Paresh, what do you mean when you say brand messaging? Can you tell us more?
Brand messaging is where, I like to define it as a narrative, which is the overarching term which encompasses everything about the company in terms of why it exists, what's the purpose for the company, what it delivers to its target customers, what problems it is solving, how is it solving those problems in a unique way, and living up to that promise throughout the entire chain. Typically, it starts with the market-facing messaging, whether it's the website, whether it's the sales process. Once the customer goes through that entire process and various touch points, they should be able to relate to the brand promise. And once the purchase happens, whether it's a B2B or a B2C or a B2B2C, that customer is able to experience that, whether it is in terms of product or service. So it's when you are able to deliver on that is when that brand promise becomes true. Otherwise, it's a vaporware that you will please them in the beginning, you will wow them in the beginning, but when they actually get to experience your product or your service or the delivery of that, they're not quite happy. So brand promise is, as much as it is external, it is an internal aspect that everybody within the company needs to embrace that promise. It cannot just be a marketing slogan. It cannot just be a great sales presentation, but everybody in the company needs to embrace that and live up to that and, play their part into delivering that promise. And that's when, you truly see companies able to deliver on that.
So, within scaling up framework, also, we speak a lot about brand promises, and there's a lot of emphasis, especially for companies when they want to reach out to their customers and ensure that there is a consistent narrative or messaging in your words, for example. So, can you give me some examples from the real world of what kind of brand promises companies have?
Yeah, before that, I want to quickly share something in understanding where this kind of falls into the overall the journey that a company is making on that. Let me know when you're able to see my screen.
Go ahead.
So when we talk about brand promise into the overall strategy that a company has. So you start with your strategy where you say, okay, well, where to play and how to win, which market we want to play in, how we win into that market. So that's your overall company strategy with the solutions that you have. And then you look at your strategic narrative, which is what's happening in the external world that we are operating in, and what's happening in the market. And a lot of markets that we look at, they are evolving. So Yeah, we started doing this 10 years ago, but what's happening in that external world that where we operate in, or our customers are operating? What's happening in that? And what's our point of view? What's our opinion on what to do about it? And this boils down to how you as a company go about solving those problems. The needs of people are changing on a daily basis. So how do we go about that? What is our opinion on that? And then comes the positioning, which is what problems are we solving and for whom that cares a lot about it, right? And when you look at a particular market, as a market may look quite big. And when I talk to companies, they say, yeah, we cater to any size of company who is 100 crore in revenue all the way to 1,000 crore in the revenue. Well, that's great that you are capable of doing that, but what's your sweet spot? What is really the area where you can solve these problems, and that's where you can add the maximum value. And after that is when you start creating the messaging, where you talk about what are the key things we want to communicate to the target buyer. There are always 10 different things that you possibly can do for the customer, but does it really everything matter to a customer at that particular point? So what are some of the key things that we want to communicate to that? And then comes the writing part. Okay, how do we say this? The way you say it in your marketing on your website, the way you say it in your sales presentation, the way you say it in your various documents that you create. So this is really when you look at it from overall how the messaging fits into the strategy for a company.
So one thing which I understood in this conversation is the idea of identifying your target customer very clearly, because once you start understanding them, your ability to serve them and in fact create a narrative around that significantly improves. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. So I'm curious to understand how should companies get started when they have to create a differentiating narrative? What is a roadmap for that?
When companies talk about their brand promise or the values, in all the cases, it has been 100% correct, whatever they've been saying. So it is factually correct what they're saying. However, when you look at the competition, 90% is very similar to what others are saying, right? One very common thing that I hear when I talk to founders that, what makes you unique? And they often say that we are not a vendor to our customers. We are more like a partner. We are more like an extension of their firm. And I've heard that, out of 200 companies I've worked with, I've heard that in 190 cases. So is it factually correct? Absolutely, it is correct. That they work very closely with the customers, they deliver that experience, but that's what everybody talks about. Second thing is that when they form these brand promises, mostly those are founder driven. The founders' beliefs, or what was true at the time they founded the company. They got early traction, and that's what it has been. And that doesn't necessarily always align with the way customer is thinking. The third aspect is that a lot of times when companies are doing their brand promise, it lacks the customer's perspective. Where the company was 5 years ago and where company is today, your customers' environments have changed. It has evolved. So one of the mistakes that I see companies make is that once they've created that messaging or that brand promise, it stays like that for a long period of time. There is one small nuance here that I wanna talk about, is that the brand promise doesn't necessarily change or should not change. It should not evolve with the time. Like when you look at Apple, they are about innovations to make people's lives better. That brand promise does not change when you look at 10 years ago, what they may do 10 years from now. But the way they go about it, it keeps changing. The way different products they bring out, different technology innovations that they bring out, it still stays true to that brand promise, the innovations and making people's lives better. Whether it is about health through Apple Watch, or whether it's about making it easy for people to complete certain tasks and what have you. So brand promise doesn't necessarily evolve over time once you have defined it very clearly that this is your why and what you're going to continue doing. But the messaging and the way you talk about the problems that you're solving, they evolve as the markets conditions change. So that is very, very important to keep in mind. So I was talking about the customer perspective is not there. So as part of the exercise that we do for creating the brand promise, creating the brand story and the narrative is that we go and talk to customers. We interview 8 to 10 different customers and we talk to them for half an hour, 45 minutes and ask very, very specific questions. And in those interviews is when we realize what matters to them. Why is it so important for a particular customer? Why they buy from this company? And I ask them a very simple question that in what situation will you stop buying from this company? And that brings out certain gaps that are there. I tell them that in what condition will you not switch even if a competition comes and offers you the same product or service at 20% lower price than what the company is giving you right now? And what they say is a gold, right? That what really matters to them. So these things come out from those discussions and they become a very important input. One example I'll give you related to that. So there was a company in the US and they were providing digital solution for government agencies who are responsible for doing inspections in the field when they go and look at the waste management facilities that are getting operated. They look at the water plants and many other such departments. They need to go do the inspection, make sure everything is up to the mark. That entire process was a very paper-based process that a person goes with a pen and a pad and they mark everything on that form. They come back to the office, they feed it into the computer system. So the problem was that more than 50% of the inspector's time was spent on this manual task. So I talked to the founders as we got into doing this exercise and I said, okay, well, what do you think is so great about your company and the way you solve this problem? And they said, we have AI and, we have this solution, which is whole entirely AI based. There's machine learning in that. It does all of these different checks and balances all the time. And we really want to highlight that as our main message, that this is whole AI based transformation that we're bringing. And I'm like, okay, great. So that was one input. And then I went and talked to their customers and I said, what really matters to you? And where do you think the company is really adding value? You'll be very surprised what I found out. When I talked to them, they said, what really matters to us is the automation. That I want my inspectors to spend 90% of the time in the field. Right now, they are spending less than 50%. That's what this company is helping me do. And that's what really matters to me. And I'm like, what about the AI part that they have as part of their system? And, through AI, different things that you're able to do and all that. And it's like, look, we are not even there yet. I need to get the automation done. And that's really what my focus is. If I'm able to achieve 90% time in the field for my people, that's what matters to me. We are year two away from really leveraging the AI. So from this, and this was not just one customer, but about 80% of their customers said that. So while the company felt that, we have developed such a great technology and AI, which is, right now it's paper-based and now this is all AI, it would not resonate with the customer. So the narrative then became that we help you get 90% time in the field. And that's what mattered to them. Zero paper, 90% time for your inspector in the field. Versus what was earlier was that, we have AI and cloud-based solution for managing field inspections.
Wow.
Again, factually correct, but it doesn't resonate with, it doesn't matter how you do it. You do it through cloud, you do it through AI, you do it through phone. It doesn't matter what problem you are solving. So this is where the point that I mentioned earlier about why the customer input is so important into this process. And also this was an example of how the founders' beliefs and the team's belief they go with that messaging. Again, factually correct, but it doesn't resonate. And in today's world, AI is like the brain doesn't recognize anymore because everything is AI, from our phone to ChatGPT to you name it, AI is everywhere. So it's not so important that AI to be front and center, but really what's the problem you're solving for them. So this is, sort of what are some of the mistakes that companies are making when they are creating the messaging and how they really need to focus on the three aspects. So I will quickly show you what are those three aspects. This is what I call 3C framework. So first is the company's positioning. that what we believe is truly unique for us, what is our solution, what problem we are solving, and then looking at the customer perspective. So this is where, we do this for a lot of companies, but they can hire a third party agency to interview the customers, because that's when you truly get the right information versus, company going out and talking to the customers. So getting that customer perspective. And the third is the competition dynamic. So looking at competition in terms of, how are they positioning themselves, what are they talking about, are they talking what we are saying, is it the same as what the competition is talking about? And there are certain things, they are called table stakes, which means that no matter what, you have to talk about it because that's what you're delivering to the customer. But there are two or three unique things that you are doing as a company and you're delivering that value. So looking at these 3 points and getting the input from here is when you form your company's story, the messaging, and your brand promise. Another aspect when you talk about this is when you create that, these are the 5 points, is there a clarity in what we're talking about? Do they get it? Do our prospects and customer get it, what we're talking about? Second is the relevance. Is it aligned with their priorities and challenges? The example that I gave is that the company was so thrilled about this AI ML.
Hmm.
That wasn't aligned with the customer's priority. It wasn't aligned with the challenges because, they are quite, far back onto the paper process. They need to get to a certain level before they can explore the AI. So that alignment is very, very important. And that's when the relevance comes into play. You have a great solution, you have great product, you have great service. Is there a value in what you're providing? Do they want it? Right? Why people are ready to pay 1.5 lakhs and $1,000 for an iPhone versus other phones. The other phones are doing equally good in terms of doing basic functions and calling and
Hmm.
WhatsApp and cameras and everything. But it's the value that is seen by the buyer, your customers, and do they want that value? The
Right.
fourth point is the differentiation. Why you, right? And this is where I see companies have sort of sometimes laundry list of things that, okay, these are 10 different things that we do. And long behold, I have seen that, 70%, 80% of the things that talk about, you can change the name of that company and put a competition's name and it becomes true, right? So it sounds, too same that, even what other companies are talking about. But this is where you need one or two things that you do really, really well and that truly differentiates you. And the last is, does it come across the way you want it? You feel that, we are such a great solution provider and
Mhm.
we make a big impact into the company's bottom line. Does it come across? How does it come across? What are you showing? What are you talking about? When you say that we make an impact to a company's bottom line, can you show 10 outcomes that you have delivered actually for the customers, where you can say that, okay, we ended up saving $50 million to them, or we ended up saying, you know, 10 crores in the first year itself. And that's where the emotional and the brand perception comes into play, and then it builds over time. So these are the 5 points in that make a good messaging. They should be kept as a framework, and making sure that you answer all these questions as you create your messaging.
Very interesting, Paresh. First of all, the whole idea of talking to customers, I think this is very important that you are close to your customers so that you understand what really connects with them. What do they value? Would like to share this with you that within the scaling up framework, in our weekly meetings, we ask our clients to share what their customers are saying. Because once they start resonating with it, I think the what they offer also changes and their narratives also start changing, which is what you were mentioning.
And that is also a validation on the brand promise, that the brand promise that you have created, are customers seeing it? And if they're not seeing it, what needs to change on your end? One of the things that when I engage with companies, I ask them that, okay, well, tell me your before and after scenario, that,
Mhm.
or you started working with a company, and what was the situation? Because you talk about improving efficiency, you talk about cost cutting, you talk about better customer experiences. So tell me what was before and what was after. And 80% of the time, they don't have the data. So this
Right.
is also very, very important aspect that when you talk about the brand promise aspect, and especially in the B2B sector, that companies should start before they do the engagement, before they provide products or services, they should capture that particular data at a particular point before you started the engagement. You don't need 100 data points. Pick 5 that are the most important. How much time was spent on a particular task that you're automating for them? How many people were really involved from the company's perspective, right? What was actually costing them? Sometimes even your customers don't have that, but you have to help them with these kinds of things. That, okay, well, tell me how many people are really working on this task right now. If you ask them blanket that, okay, well, tell me how much is it costing you right now to manage this process, they're not going to have that information. But you break it down for them and say, okay, it takes you 5 people to manage this, and they spend about 30 hours a week, each of them. So about 150 hours a week is spent on that. And then you go down from that. So come up with 4 or 5 core metrics that you are really impacting for a company and capture that before you start any engagement. It's going to probably take you 6 months to a year or 2 years to have that data where you can truly show before and after effect. But when you are able to show that, not only it works amazingly well in the sales process, but this is what you give it back to your customer and say that, look, this is what you have been able to save. This is what you have been able to see the increase. And you are making them a hero. And you are saying that this is truly the ROI. Because when it comes to ROI, a lot of times it's not so clear cut, right? So this is how the companies can also make sure that the brand promise that they're delivering is realized by the customer. And if they have this kind of data point that they have captured, they can communicate that back to the customer as part of the quarterly review or an annual review when they do it with the customer, or before the renewals. This is a great data point to show them that, look, this is where we have added the value.
Right. When it comes to measuring the impact of a brand promise, you suggested that you capture data before and after, and that really helps us understand what impact it has created. So, what kind of metrics could be there, if I may ask?
So when we talk about the metrics on this whole brand promise, the narrative, the messaging that you've created, um, there are 2 aspects. So one, what I just talked about is that companies should be identifying 4 or 5 metrics where they're delivering value to their customers and track them before, during, and after certain period. So before they
Okay.
begin the engagement, then depending on what you're delivering and how soon the customer would start seeing that impact, do it at 3 months, 6 months, a year. You can figure out the timeline that is appropriate for your industry and continue to track those to see what value you are really delivering for your customers. How do you know that this is working?
Right.
So there are certain metrics that you can look at. First is it resonating? It will, if it resonates, then only you're going to see the results. So in the earlier slide that I showed you, that it needs to resonate with them. It
Mhm.
needs to align with their problems, their priorities, and they need to see the value. When that happens, first metrics you will see it that your leads will start increasing. Whether you call it your MQL or your SQL, you will see those start going up. That's one metric. Second is the conversion from your lead to the deal closure. That conversion, let's say you're at 10%, you will see that percentage increase, go from 10% to 15%, go from 10% to 20%. If a company can increase their conversion rate from 10% to 20%, just that alone will double their revenue without getting any more leads.
True.
So a lot of times companies accept it that, okay, you know what, this is industry standard, 10-15% is pretty good, but how can we improve that? That is a second metric you can look at, that conversions increasing, sales cycle becoming shorter, because no longer you are fighting on a price, right? When the customer does not necessarily see the level of the value and they're putting you at a same level at everybody else, then it comes down to price, which is the case in the tendering process, but that's sort of a unique process. But otherwise, if you are not seen as for a differentiator, or you are not seen unique, you're going to compete on a price, which is not a good situation to be in.
Mhm.
When this messaging resonates, they see the true value that you're bringing in, you will see the sales cycle become shorter. Another thing you will also see in the metric is the LTV for a customer increases. Your margins also play a big role. So I was talking to one of the companies, we recently did this exercise with them, and their prices are about 5 to 10% higher than what is there in the market. Customers are willing to pay that. And I dug deeper to figure out why.
Mhm.
And they said, so right now the pricing is this, but if company doesn't do these couple of things, then, we may switch to someone else. So we worked on this exercise. I have an example I'll share in a bit, that how can we make sure that this margin that we have, which is higher than, what is in the market, we'll continue to get that margin. So you see that your margins are increasing, or on the other side, they are not decreasing. You don't have to reduce your price to win the deals. Your lifetime value for customer increases. The contract value also increases because now customers are starting to see the value.
Right.
The customer satisfaction score, the NPS, it is Net Promoter Score, you will see that going up. And the last thing is that the retention increases for your customers. So these are some of the key metrics that you can look at and say whether you're getting the ROI or not. This also then translates for companies on the internal side, because companies also look at bringing in talent. So when you talk about this brand promise, like when Apple talks about innovation to make people's lives better, what are people working within Apple doing? When you look at some other innovative companies, why people want to work at those companies. So when you are delivering on that brand promise, when you're delivering on this value, when you're creating these solutions for the problems that your customers are facing, your employees also see that.
Right.
You're able to see your retention rate for your employees, or the attrition reduces. You are able to attract better talent in the market. So those things you see on the internal side, but these are some of the core metrics to look at, see what's the ROI on the exercise that you have done, and how well it is delivering for you in terms of your top line.
So, Paresh, if we can summarize this, I think these are very important matrices which you said, through which we can measure the impact or ROI of a brand promise, especially the external ones.
You look at on the external side, some of the key ones to look at is your leads are increasing, your MQL and SQL, they're going up. The quality of those leads are higher, which means that you're going from your rate from MQL to SQL is much higher. Second is that the conversion rate increases. You go from 10 to 15, 15 to 20, 20 to 25. Even if you see 5% increase, it's huge for a
Right.
company. So look at the conversion rate. After that, you look at the length of your sales cycle. You should start seeing that sales cycle get reduced from what it was. Your contract value also increases.
Right.
And then in return, your lifetime value for a customer also increases because you continue to deliver on that promise.
Hmm.
And the retention rate also increases for your customers. So when you're doing renewals, you see that rate also increasing. And the last is the Net Promoter Score. You should see the increase in that. So these are 6 core metrics that companies can monitor to see the impact of the brand promise, brand narrative is making.
Yeah, wonderful. That's really great. So when we talk about brand promises, within the scaling up framework, we also talk about a concept called as brand promise guarantee. So our brands also guaranteeing what they are promising. Have you come across some of these?
I have an example that I wanna show. Okay. So here there was a manufacturing company, and they manufacture hardware for the power, transmission lines, distribution line, and all that. So this is what was their positioning before. We make, so I asked their leadership and said, okay, well, how do you define the company? What do you do? Who you are? Right? And this is how they define themselves. We make hardware fittings for transmission, distribution, and substation. Nothing wrong with it. Factually, absolutely correct. That's what they do. But there are 20 other companies who say exactly the same thing, that they make hardware fittings for transmission, distribution, and substation. Why us? This was their sort of differentiation or their brand promise. Their brand promise, it was the 85% on-time delivery And this was everywhere in their communication. 5% on time delivery. That's our brand promise. We make sure you are satisfied through high quality products. Now, when I first heard that 85%, it did not excite me. It actually raised an alarm in my mind that, oh, you're saying 85%. Why not 100%? So while that 85% sounds a great number,
Right.
but it raises a question in my mind that, oh, what about another 15% of the time that you're not delivering on time? And what if I am the one who happens to fall within that 15%? So as much as this company felt that this is a great promise for us to deliver, it actually works, contrary to that. Right? It raises fears for companies that, whoa, why, right? So talk to their customers and understood what really matters to them, right? It matters to them that it is delivered on time because they have to then go and execute on those projects. I talked to the company and I said, okay, well, tell me why 85%? What is stopping you from saying 100%? And they're like, well, 10% of the time it is when we are ready to send everything to the customer. The customer says, no, the site is not yet ready. We can't take this order. And there are 2-3 other reasons why they are not yet ready to take it. So they just tell us to hold. So I said, well, that's not on you, right? The customer is asking you to not send. So you add that 10%, you are now already at 95%. So why not 100%? And they said, well, another 5% is that sometimes we have some production scheduling and all that, and sometimes there is a delay because of that. So I said, okay, well, can you manage that? And can we not give a guarantee to the customer? So in that entire process, we made a very small change. We said that, okay, can you, right now, what they do is they communicate when the material is ready to be dispatched. They communicate to the customer 2 days before the material is going to be dispatched. And that's when they find out that, oh my God, customer is not yet ready to receive this. They need us to hold for some time. And then this creates inventory issues and all that for the company. So we said, okay, why don't we identify 3 or 4 key phases? Once you get the order to it goes into the manufacturing, finishing, all that stuff. So we identified the steps and we said, we communicate at every step to the customer and say that, okay, right now, this is where we are. We are on schedule for this delivery date. It comes into the next phase, then goes to the next phase. You communicate via simple email to the customer and all the stakeholders that this is the progress, this is where we are. And at least 20 days before the material is going to be dispatched, you tell them that this is the date when this is going to be, so we are on September 23rd. This is going to be, dispatching on October 17th. And if a customer has an issue, you will find out now. That's one thing. So then it'll help you figure out your scheduling, whatever you want to do. And more importantly, it gives this information to the customer so that they can plan things on their end that, okay, this is when this material is going to come, so I can line up things on my end. Very simple thing. Company has all this information available to them. It just wasn't getting communicated. So we made that little change in that process of communication. With that, the company can now give the guarantee. So that is one aspect of that, and I'll show you how we kind of weave that into the messaging. But the main thing that we came out from here is that, okay, what they do, what is the bigger impact they are making? So it changed from we make hardware for transmission distribution to powering nations forward. Right? That fits into the bigger umbrella in them supplying this, which enables cities, states, countries to have power reach residencies and industries and businesses and all that stuff. How is this done? As an uncompromising backbone of global power grids. This is the positioning for the company now, that whatever we do, we are powering nations forward. And uncompromising, which we later on defined for them what it means to be uncompromising backbone for global power grids, right? So that became the overall 50,000 feet narrative. And then we started boiling it down to, the differentiators. So this is, your question about the guarantee.
Right.
When we talk to the customers and we talk to the companies and the engineers who have been there for 40, 50 years, I said, what is the average lifespan of these fittings that you put? What is expected by the customer? And they say, about 20 to 25 years. But they said that our fittings have been there in the field for more than 40, 45 years, right? And they are performing flawlessly right now. And one of the things that came out when we talked to their customers is, what makes them unique is that, and I would say 9 out of 10 customers said that, when the part is installed, the inspector goes and does the testing on it. And the part that this company was providing never failed, ever, in any of the tests in the field, versus some of the competitors' parts were failing. So I asked them that, okay, this is the fact, this is what you are able to deliver. Can you give zero failure guarantee? And if any part fails, then, they're going to take care of everything on their own. But so far, they never had to do this for any of the customers. So we said zero failure guarantee. Any of our parts are never going to fail any test whatsoever, or they're not going to fail in the field. Now, if somebody takes a hammer and hits with it, that's a different story. But in the normal circumstances, they are not. And the company has been able to deliver that for 65 years.
Wow.
That's what we put as a guarantee. Second thing we put a guarantee on is zero delay. We're going to give you on-time delivery, guaranteed. So once we get all the details and we tell you that this is going to be delivered on or before October 17th, we're going to give you that. If you as a customer tell us to hold, that's a different story altogether. But we're going to give you this on time. If we don't give you this, we're going to take 2% or 5% penalty on us if you're not able to deliver that. So we are putting money where our mouth is, right? So these were the two very, very important aspects. And the company was not that far from it, right? They were already at 95%. Right now, what this does is, as much as this is for the customer facing, this is where it became extremely important for the entire company, the production team, to embrace this message, right? Embrace this brand promise that no failure guarantee and no delay in this. So this means that the sales, marketing, and the production teams, they need to work very closely, look at the schedule, put certain milestones in place so that for any unforeseen reason, if they see the delay, it's not a last minute thing, because they're able to identify that way ahead and make sure that they're able to deliver on this promise. So it also helps fix the internal processes and have internal accountability also for the people.
Right. What you said is brand promises work two ways. They also work externally with your customers because it helps them decide, or that's the tipping point these brand promise guarantees bring. And also it works internal because it gives your teams internally a goal to achieve and it aligns everyone.
Correct. And the main thing is that you can only deliver, you can only talk about that brand promise when you as a company able to deliver on that. It cannot be just a marketing slogan, like I said before. So this is where the top leadership role becomes extremely important, that this should not just be a presentation or a marketing talk on the website or the sales talk. It really needs to be embraced by everyone in the company and every single department, because it is everyone's responsibility to make sure that we are delivering on this. So if that's the brand promise we're delivering, then the company then starts looking at, okay, what are our internal processes? Where are the gaps? What are the things we need to tighten up? So, when we talk about brand promise, it's more internal, where you are delivering on that and then confidently you go out and talk about that in your story.
Correct. And a very interesting example, and I think everyone more or less is aware of that, and that's Domino's Pizza. Their brand promise has been about delivering within 30 minutes, and if not, then they guarantee a free pizza. And this has worked really well for them, externally also and internally also, because if the entire systems and process is designed around that.
So they wanted to deliver on that brand promise, 30 minutes or free. And I'm sure they have given some free pizzas, but that percentage is going to be mostly in single digit. So it worked, but in order for them to get to that brand promise, their entire supply chain had to be streamlined, had to have every little thing in place, the ingredients, the people at these locations, the drivers, all that had to be precisely aligned in order to deliver that brand promise. So yeah, those internal aspects are extremely crucial.
We are at the fag end currently. I have one more question before we move to the rapid fire round. You have spent significant time in the US market. What's your perspective when it comes to brand promises? How do they evolve across geographies? Do you see a difference or is it the same story everywhere?
Well, there are certain nuances depending on a particular market that you are serving and, the specific terminology. But at the end, you are dealing with humans. Whether you're talking about, India, whether you're talking about US, you're talking about any part of the world, you're ultimately dealing with humans.
Mhm.
And the way people make decisions, whether you are buying a phone for yourself or a TV for your family, a car, or $1 million software. All decisions are made from here, heart, and then
Yeah.
they're justified by your brain. And a lot of studies have been done on this. And that decision made first emotional level, then justified by the brain, it happens so fast that typically people think that, no, I went through this excruciating level of due diligence and said, then we selected this vendor. But when you ask them that, okay, why you selected this vendor? And long behold, the answer is, it just felt right. We were getting very good vibe from their people. So where does that vibe come? There is no objective thing that you can say that vibe meter was high here and low there. So it's that.
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, you are dealing with humans. There is emotional level branding that is involved into the decision making. And it doesn't really matter to a particular geography. That the messaging is one way when you are in India, it is another way when you are in some other East Asian countries. It's not like that. It is quite universal in how the humans go about making the decisions. So no, I have not really seen difference in terms of how the approach makes a difference.
Great. Thanks for sharing that, Paresh. Now, moving to the rapid fire round, and I have 5 questions to ask. You have to answer that in a word or a sentence. What's your favorite brand?
Apple.
One word that defines great storytelling.
Emotional resonance.
First emotion that brand should evoke.
That this is me. That, I'm going to go a little more than a couple words here, but when you look at certain things, you feel that this is me. This product is me. I can see myself in this and I feel great about it. And same thing that, this is for my company and it's going to help me do my job in a better way. So that emotion is, yeah, this is me.
Thanks. A brand color you would ban forever.
There is no color I would ever ban. All the colors are very beautiful. It really depends on the particular brand in terms of what they stand for and what they want to do. But I am not against any color whatsoever. So I would say no, there isn't any color that I would ban.
And the last one. What's your message for our audience?
The message is that, really look at the company. You are doing great in terms of, what you're delivering for your customers. Take a step back and go through the process of really understanding the value that you bring to the customers. Is it really understood by your customers? Look at the market that you're playing in. How has that market evolved? And what you need to change to keep pace with it. And based on what you are currently doing, without changing your solution per se, how can you approach different aspects of the market, which opens up more opportunities for you? So rather than continuing to solve the same problem over and over and over again, are there other ways that you can still tackle that particular problem? So look at that, and most importantly, involve your customers. Either you internally figure out a process to get very, very specific feedback from your customers, or get a third party involved in getting that information. But that is extremely crucial. And do that exercise of checking where is that alignment of, what truly is your brand promise. And are you really delivering on that? And if you're not, what you really need to do internally to be able to deliver on that and create a bold story. Don't shy away from being bold about the way you talk about the company, because bold gets noticed, bold gets people stop and go, huh, that's interesting. I want to look at that a little bit more. So don't be afraid of being bold. Don't go on too far side, but don't be afraid of being bold about the way you talk about yourself, and be bold about your promises. Make one promise, but make sure you're able to deliver on that, and make that bold promise and deliver on that. That's what I would say.
Thanks, Paresh, for that final statement. Make a bold promise and deliver on that. In fact, my takeaway from today's session was understanding that your brand promise doesn't change, but your narrative can over time. And with that, I would like to close this session for today. Thanks, Paresh, for joining us. A lot of elements which came out so nicely for our audience and even for me to learn from. Thank you so much.